Yes! 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 No! No! No!
Hey guys, it's the Big King here. Inside Out 2, Pixar's most recent movie. Now, I reviewed this movie a few weeks ago and my thoughts on it haven't changed. I thought this movie was very solid, not as good as the first one, but only by a small margin. It had memorable characters, once again, and it used its setting and concept very well, and overall was a film I got a lot of enjoyment out of. Probably the best Pixar sequel since Toy Story 3. And it seems I'm not alone in thinking that, as Inside Out 2 has now within 2 weeks reached $1 billion worldwide. Now, I don't usually talk about a movie's success, but here it's a little different, because this movie's success is probably the most important thing about a movie this entire year. And that's no understatement. So I want to talk about that, because this movie's success could spell disaster for Pixar, depending on a few factors. First, let's talk about the fact this movie reached $1 billion itself. Not only is this highly impressive as an accomplishment, but it's now the first movie of the year to do so. Yeah, it beat out Dune Part 2, Godzilla x Kong, Kung Fu Panda 4, Ghostbusters, and Planet of the Apes in far less time. So already, it's incredibly impressive, especially when you consider the fact the first Inside Out made $800 million in total. Now, on the one hand, this is great to see. The movie was legitimately great, so seeing it get this treatment it deserves is great to see. Plus, it's nice to see Pixar finally get a win, as most of their prior movies as of late, although not failures, definitely failed to meet expectations. So them getting a box office like this in this year, that has been struggling for blockbusters, it's just great to see. But on the other hand, there's a very strong likelihood that both Pixar and Disney are going to learn all the wrong lessons from this outcome. What do I mean? Well, let's just say Pixar is being completely mishandled, and it's all thanks to Disney. You see, ever since COVID back in 2020, Pixar's fate has been in limbo, with all their movies being released in theaters or on streaming, or just streaming alone. Disney has been holding Pixar back in order to get more content for Disney+. So despite the quality of their recent films, they end up doing badly because they're forced onto Disney+, instead of being given a proper opportunity. Thus, films like Luca and Turning Red, both very strong films with interesting visions that I feel would have definitely drawn in audiences, were now suddenly doomed to underperform, with Pixar's only theatrical movies either being a part of their biggest franchise in Lightyear, or poorly promoted Elementals. And the sad part is, everyone sees exactly what the issue is here, that Disney is not giving Pixar the respect it needs. But the only ones who don't see what the issue is Disney themselves, with Disney using all of this to justify Pixar being treated like this, while they continue to put their own movies on the big screen while completely limiting Pixar. They created an issue they didn't need, all for the sake of one thing: money. The only movies from Pixar that Disney have been treating fairly are the ones that have already proven to be successful, with Lightyear being an unimaginative spin-off of Toy Story, and Inside Out 2 a sequel to one of the most beloved recent masterpieces in history. Disney no longer want to take risk with these type of movies, because all their other projects like Indiana Jones, Star Wars, and the MCU have all been struggling a lot recently. And it's this mentality that has now started to rub off on Pixar themselves. Not only did they lay off a large portion of their staff as of recently, but one of the most important figures in Pixar's history, Pete Docter, recently came out with some very concerning words for Pixar. Shout out to Stray Thrillers Productions, because I found out about this through him, so I'm going to quickly play what he said in this video, so you can understand as to how bad this really is.
After Lightyear lost millions of dollars in 2022, and Elemental had Pixar's worst ever opening weekend performance the following year, there was a real and intense period of self-scrutiny and feeling like we messed up in some way, says Pete Docter, the current chief creative officer of Pixar. Executives hosted post-mortems to determine how to revitalize the studio, he recalls. They arrived at mentoring Pixar's upcoming directors to focus less on autobiographical tales. Luca had been inspired by its director's childhood in Italy, Turning Red by its director's relationship with her mother, and Elemental, which did gain some momentum overseas and online, by its director's immigrant family. Pixar would instead develop concepts with clear mass appeal, many of which, in the case of sequels and spin-offs, had already been proven. The studio's movies should be less a pursuit of any director's catharsis, and instead speak to a commonality of experience, Docter says. I don't think we can ever let ourselves off the hook of making sure that we deliver the best possible and most relatable films.
Essentially, Pete Docter is saying that the studio has been failing to meet expectations, and so have been encouraging their artists to focus less on their visions and abilities to tell good stories, and instead try to appeal to as many people as possible. That is shocking, because that sounds far more like Illumination than Pixar. The very thing that built Pixar was its creative freedom, but now that very thing is being suppressed because their movies have been handled so poorly. Hell, they're already implementing this mentality into their work now, with the fact that they're making a Toy Story 5. Do I even need to say how awful this is? Because as much as I liked Toy Story 4, it definitely was the weakest one of the series, and was just completely unnecessary, trying to continue the story that was already completely ended from Toy Story 3. Not only does the very existence of a Toy Story 5 ruin Pixar's credibility of a creative studio, but also shows how desperate they are, with them being forced into a corner by Disney that now they have to rely on their most popular IP once again. It's so depressing, and it was this thing that reminded me of something. Pixar themselves were worried about this ever since 2004. Again, shout out to Electric Dragon for pointing this out in one of his older videos, because I bet a lot of you didn't know this happened at all, because I know I certainly didn't.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg for Pixar's problems. In 2004, when Pixar's contract with Disney was finishing, Steve Jobs wanted to make a new deal with Disney in which Disney would only distribute their movies and Pixar would have all the profits for themselves. Of course, Disney didn't like the idea, and after a huge fight with Jobs and Disney CEO Michael Eisner, Steve decided to look for another distributor, leaving the rest of Pixar scared that if another company merged with Pixar, then they would become nothing but a factory that makes animated features for the sake of money.
Pixar themselves have been worried about this very issue for decades now, and it seems we're getting close to this very thing becoming a reality. But it's not all bleak, thankfully, because despite what Disney believes, it's you, the audience, who ultimately determine what happens. And the way you do that is being careful who you support and what you support. Supporting movies you feel are true works of art and deserve your attention the most, ones that really have something to say and that are not just regurgitated slop. Films like The Spider-Verse, Inside Out 2, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, all films that pushed their concepts and ideas to their absolute limits to create something newer and meaningful and something worth telling, not useless junk like Despicable Me 4 or Toy Story 5. It's you who decide what is popular. It's you who decide what is successful. And the best way you can help this issue is by supporting Pixar's next movie, Elio. Now, I don't know whether Elio is going to be good or bad, but give it a chance. That's all I ask. Give Elio a chance, because this movie is in limbo at the moment, and if it's not given the proper attention it deserves, it runs the risk of completely killing Pixar's originality entirely. It's been the Pink King. Thank you all for watching this far, and don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want more videos just like this, my goal is to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and with your help, I could definitely achieve my dreams. Next video, I'm going to be talking about Despicable Me. I'm going to be looking at another animation studio because I've got some choice words for that movie. And with that, I will see you all next time.